Well, it's almost that time again. I know. We just had the 4th of July, and you're just like, what are you doing, Audrey? Why are you rushing us? Well, a lot of people are actually going to be going back to school in about 3 weeks. I know. So we got North Carolina, sometimes we got Georgia, all our southern states. A lot of people are going back like either the end of July or beginning of August. So guess what? You still need to kind of think about how we're going to prepare our students for the next step. So my name is Audrey Codner, and I'm the founder of ACG Math Tutoring, and I want to welcome you to Two Tutors Talking. So if you are watching this live, go ahead and say hashtag live. If you're watching the replay, go ahead and hit hashtag replay. So today I'm going to introduce you to one of my greatest friends, and plus the one that I go to whenever I need someone for calculus, because that's not me. I want to introduce Robert Travers. I was about to say Travers all over again. And from Main Street Math Tutoring. So, Robert, welcome to hopefully one day we're going to call it Triple T because we'll be so mad famous by then. So, welcome to Two Tutors Talking. How are you?
I'm doing great, Audrey. Thanks for having me. It's really a pleasure to be here.
Oh, that's awesome. No problem. Because I feel like we've known each other for 3 years. Almost
Yeah.
four. My goodness. Time is just flying by. We basically started tutoring around the same time. And anytime that we basically need each other, like a tutoring advice or maybe even clients, we've always kind of helped each other out. So when people say that you have to be basically by yourself when it comes to like any kind of tutoring business, that is a lie. There's always some kind of collaboration. So, if anything, we really want to basically introduce Robert so he can tell you a little bit about his services. And so, for you parents, you can kind of say, all right, maybe I might want to take a little further look into Robert and have him help my son or daughter. So, basically, Robert, like tell us a little bit about yourself and your service.
Sure. So my name is Robert. I'm from the great state of Maine, and they call me the king of calculus because that's my specialty. I love tutoring calculus. It's to me it's just so much fun. Um I think that especially with that higher level of math, it can be hard sometimes because you get to I know most of parents, including mine, when I got up to calculus in high school, they were like, and if I needed help, they just looked at me like I had 12 heads. So I set business up to try and alleviate that problem a little bit because at some point math just looks like Greek.
Mm, that's true because I know sometimes it gets intimidating as the progression goes on. Like, first people, the shock of their life was, why is there letters and numbers together and we're calling it math? So that's when algebra kind of came into it, and that's when everyone kind of got shocked. And they're no longer using the X for multiplication. Now there's a dot and there's a parenthesis, and you're like, what's happening? And then before you know it, you're talking about differentiation and you're
Mhm.
talking about limits and you're like what's happening. So I mean, from your experiences, like what are some of the things that you notice that say parents are looking for when they basically get your services?
Yeah, so I think so from what I've noticed, a lot of parents that I get are looking for what I said earlier, basically the I can no longer help my kid. So I and when I and it and I find that when I talk to a lot of parents as well, they're I'm not gonna say upset, but wishing they could help their child.
Yeah, that's true because it's okay. And we always want to say for parents, it's okay to basically say, you know what, I'm out. Like this is like once we got here, I'm out. And now it's like we rely a lot on teachers. And it's not something wrong. because teachers, we all know, we were both in the classroom. So it's just like we understand that there's a lot of demands from teachers, and sometimes we can't get to really every single solitary child. As much as we try that whole differentiated instruction, yeah, let's just call it what it is, madness. Um,
Yeah,
but there's some kids that they really want to learn it and they really want to understand it, and it's nothing wrong for them to basically get some assistance, and that's all right. And that's where we come in. It's sometimes we're like the translator between the child and the teacher. We just kind of do all those things. In the world of calculus, what are like those parts or those pieces that you think is like missing? Like when you have a kid that comes on the session, like what is the one, probably like one or many common pieces that you notice in those advanced classes?
I think it mostly comes down to background because we both know math is a very foundational subject in that if one piece of the foundation's missing, then you can't build upon it. It's like a house, right? You can't build
Mhm.
upon a bad foundation. So I find that a lot of the times it's just lacking that background knowledge. Because let's face it, calculus calculus doesn't it's just a combination of everything they've learned. It's basically
Mhm.
take your algebra over here, take your geometry over here, and bring them together. Add a
Right.
little trig.
Mix it all up. And then boom, you got a calculus baby.
Oh yeah,
And I mean, and my whole thing, like, especially since the pandemic, have you noticed like a shift, like kids that you normally would have taught in calculus versus, I want to say, a new phase of students, like, say, even last year? Have you noticed that that foundational piece is either weaker or stronger?
weaker. I think that I think that COVID and all of that really caused a caused the problem that we're going to be seeing for a long time. I think that even the students that were in kindergarten, first grade, they're going to be impacted the most. And I mean, we haven't seen that yet, but it's going to happen. And I feel like in the next 10 years, we're gonna have a an issue of yeah. I don't quite know what to call it, but I think we're gonna
Right.
have a serious issue in about 5, 10 years.
Yeah, because even last year for me, especially algebra 2, I got a lot of students, especially if they're coming from their states when they did algebra 1, geometry, then algebra 2. And a lot of parents were like, they're usually really good at math, but all of a sudden, like they're not connecting it. And every parent I had to say, well, you got to remember, 2 years ago, they were in algebra 1. And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, what happened 2 years ago? And they're like, oh. And I'm like, that's the foundational piece. Like, if you don't have that algebraic language down, and then now you're going to carry it over to an advanced type of speech, they're not going to know. So it's almost like you trying to speak, like, you go from basic Spanish, and then all of a sudden you go to like Barcelona for like a month, and you're like, all I can say is C. That's all. That's all I can see, and you're like, blah, and then that's about it. Like, and you're like, okay, you gotta live there for a month, so you don't have that structural piece. So I always say it's not their fault because a lot of people think that, oh, it's my fault. I didn't do this when they were a kid. I'm like, well, I don't know. Stop blaming yourself. You just have to understand that 2 years ago, depending on who they had for an Algebra 1 teacher, there were some teachers that were still teaching and instructing and still trying to do little bits and pieces. But there was a lot of teachers that didn't know what to do. So they were just like, and I got 40 kids. Some of them are putting their cameras on, some of them aren't. And then once everyone decided at the end of 2020, the end of that school year, if they logged on once, they automatically passed. Now we got kids that are just like, and just like you said, with the third graders or the younger ones, they were missing that piece too. They were missing that multiplication piece, and which I feel is essential. Like, how do you feel about that?
Absolutely, it's beyond essential. It's critical.
And it's really difficult. But then here's one thing. Like, since we're doing all these things, and yes, you're already a unique person because you're just Robert. And you're from Maine, and you're breaking things down. But like, as a parent, because there's so many different tutors out there, what is something that makes you you're unique compared to most other tutors?
That's a good question. I mean, first off, from my research, I've noticed that there aren't a lot of tutors out there that actually focus in on calculus for starters. But I think what also makes me unique is that ability to I think my patience is what makes me unique. I mean, I think that I like to explain things in the lowest common as if I were as if I were first learning. And I don't remember who said it, but someone said that the best way to tell if you know something is to teach it and explain it
Right.
to someone who has never seen it before. And I think that through that experience and through that development of patience, I think that I think that's what makes me unique. And I'm sure there are people saying, doesn't everyone have patience?
No.
No, 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 no.
No, definitely not. I've had a couple of teachers myself, and I'm like, and that's probably reason why a lot of students need to come to us, because there's a lot of people that know the math but just don't know how to break it down to the students.
Mhm.
So all of a sudden they're just like, here's an assignment, here's an assignment, here's an assignment. And they don't really understand, like, even if you have, like, say, a disability, or if you're a special ed all the way up to honors and GT, or even AP, that's always some kind of form of a disability somewhere in there. So a lot of people just ignore that, and they're just like, well, this is how I learned it, and I just go blah 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 blah. And the kids are like, I what did can you repeat that? And then some teachers won't even repeat it. So we gets lost in translation. So I think that's why we're essential, you know? Like, I think we're really essential because, like you said, patience really does play a huge part. That, and also building of trust. Like, what do you think? Like, do you feel like when your students come to you, is it almost like there's like some form of trust between you guys?
Oh, without question. Absolutely, I feel that there's trust between the students that I serve and myself.
Because we're building like a relationship,
Hmm.
you know? We're not trying to be weird or anything, but it is like almost like a buffer between, it's almost like a trifold. Like, you're in the middle of the student, the parent, and the teacher. So,
And I mean,
go ahead.
I prefer to think of it as like a mentor, right? As
Yes.
a guide. And I know I had a few students come after they were done tutoring with me. I had a few students come back and thank me for helping them, and I say the same thing every time. You did all the work. All I did was just guide the way.
Exactly.
And I think that's what
And
makes a
just
really elite tutor is someone who can guide students to success, in whatever form that may be.
exactly. Well said. Definitely well said. because we're not here to re-teach. We're here to just guide,
Mhm.
like just a little bit of tweaks, a little bit of adjustments here and there. Um, there's someone that's sharing us some a little bit of love as like a Facebook user. And because that's what it is. I mean, when we're tutors, a lot of people kind of mix us up with, like, say, oh, you're another teacher. And that's not the case. Like, it's great to have a tutor that was a teacher because we understand what the next step is going to be. And sometimes if you're looking for a tutor, it's okay if you get someone that wasn't a teacher, but take a look to see, is there some form of progression? And like to go back, there needs to be some patience because a lot of parents think, oh, well, or some of the kids will think, oh, I got a tutor, so that means I should have an A now. Who said that? And we laugh, but it's so true. They think that boom, I got an A in my class, and then when they don't get an A, like they came to you failing, and now they got a C because they're seeing the progression. I've had some parents question, well, are you doing right? I'm like, what are you talking about? But then the kid will jump in and say, if I didn't have Miss Audrey or if I didn't have Mr. Robert, I wouldn't be able to get this C because we came close to the end of the quarter. We've been working with each other for like 2 weeks or 3 weeks. But a lot of people think that, hey, if I'm paying for this, I should be getting an automatic miracle. And that's not really the case.
And I mean, even if it is the case, miracles take time. We're not. I don't. I think. I mean, we're not genies. We can't just snap our fingers and say, "Here you go."
You're a genius now. If so, we'll be charging more. No,
Absolutely.
but while we're here, do you have any upcoming attractions, or is there anything that you're doing for the summer? Or I should really say update on summers. So, is there anything that you're doing for the summer, or are you taking any students? What are you doing for the summer?
Yeah. So mostly, I use the summer as a way to reflect and work on some other projects that I
Mhm.
need to. Like for example, I'm working on my podcast schedule for the upcoming year. I'm
Oh, yeah.
working on getting a YouTube channel developed. I'm working on I'm actually getting ready to take an online class in public speaking because anyone who knows me knows that I'm not very good at it. I mean,
Doing great. Stop.
something like this, if I were to just talk for an hour, I couldn't do
No.
it, at least not yet. So I'm working on that. But with that said, yeah, I am taking students as well, especially those that have AP assignments,
Okay.
um, because I don't know how they do it down in Maryland, but when I took AP and I find up here in Maine that teachers will sometimes assign summer assignments to help get the students acclimated to the course. And the funny thing about AP is that AP, if you thought your math class was moving at a fast pace, AP
Mhm.
takes it and accelerates it about fivefold.
Exactly. A lot of people love the title of AP, but sometimes they don't really understand when they said advanced placement, they mean advanced.
Oh,
Like turbocharged, hair blowing in the wind. Hold on to your wigs, people, because it is going to be as soon as you start school, like the first day of school, boom. They're not waiting. There's no like, oh, let's do some cute stuff to get used to each other. Most, especially like here in Maryland, I know they start right away. And then if your child is going from, believe it or not, I've had one student that went from eighth grade, she was an incoming ninth grader. She was taking an AP class. I don't know who did that. Yeah, yeah, exactly. As a
what?
ninth grader. So let's talk. The first week was stressful. So I was doing a lot of Okay. One, this is not me. Thank God it wasn't a math class. So I was like, I can't do it. But still, it was still an AP class. And it was just like, all right, you just gotta breathe. Let's focus on this. Okay, let's do the math stuff. All right, boom, that's done. But now, how are you going to tackle this? She's like, I can do this. Good, do that. When is this due? She's like, da, da, da. All right, so what are they asking for? And then I was just basically helping with that organizational piece because sometimes that happens. They'll have a kid, they'll come to me and ask, Miss Audrey, do you know anything about chemistry? I haven't seen chemistry since I was a zygote. Uh, and that was many moons ago. So for people that don't know what a zygote is, that's the early forms of child development. Take a look at that. Um, and I would look at it, but luckily there was a formula, and I'm like, all right, I can follow a formula. I can do that. Give me some examples. All right, this is what they're doing. This is what you're doing first. This is what you're doing second. But I always say, let's not make this into a practice. I'm I'm willing to help, but sometimes it happens. Sometimes you get some of those classes that merges. But yes, you do have some summer packets or summer activities. So take a look at your child's book bag. It's always seemed to be the black hole. Yeah, I know. I know. School ended, the bag went over here. You're buying a new bag, which is fabulous, but take a look at the old bag to see if there is a summer reading packet or if there is a math packet in there. Because they always try to ignore it, thinking that it's just going to poof go away, but it's not.
Nope. And and most of the time that's your child's first assignment of the year, first grade of the year, excuse me. So if it gets
Mhm.
done, you're already starting off on the right foot.
Exactly. And most times they're not that long, except for the AP ones. The APs will be a little more details. But when it comes to some of the assignments that I've seen, Catholic school, private schools, some public schools, they do it depending on what state they're in. Some of them that can be done in like 2 days or like in 2 hours, or two sessions. Usually it's a general thing. So why not get it done and then move on so you can be at least somewhat acclimated before the school year starts. That's when we see a lot of clients because they're coming in and they're like, oh, my child has this packet that's due. And you're like, let me guess, a summer reading packet? Yeah, okay, all right. So that'll be two sessions, I know, automatically to get that done. So if anything, since you do calculus, is there any other concept? Like, I know that's your niche, but is there anything else that you will possibly take on, like, say, SAT or ACT? Would you
Yeah.
consider doing any of
So
those?
yeah, so normally my range goes from algebra 1 all the way up to stuff like differential equations, linear algebra. I get into the college stuff.
Okay. So that will be awesome because everyone usually sees the elementary. They may see basically algebra one up to like say college algebra, but nice knowing that you have someone that you guys can reach out to that could does the advance, that would be beneficial for you guys. All right. So if anything, like how should people reach out to you?
Yeah, so the ways I have people reach out to me are through my email, mainstreettutors@gmail.com, with the street being abbreviated. Or they can give me a call or text at 207-432-1199.
Okay. Awesome.
And they can
Well,
reach out
thank
to me
you.
on Facebook as well.
Oh yes. Oh yeah. We're all about the Facebook. And like in worst case scenario, if you're like, oh, how did I get that? You can look up, I have his name underneath. And then also you can look him up on Facebook. And if you ever get stuck and you're like, Audrey, what was his name again? And I'm like, I can direct you to as well. So if you are, especially if you're a tutor, because sometimes tutors like to check this out. If you are a tutor and you just need a place to go, especially a math tutor, we also have from the classroom to online tutoring. more than willing to do that, to break down some concepts. And if you ever need like math tutoring yourself, if you have Robert, then you also have me. You can reach me at my Solo 2 account, and all that is in my bio. So once again, I just wanted to say, Robert, thank you so much for coming to Two Tutors Talking. And I know I'm definitely going to be passing more students on to you because I love your personality and I love your patience with the kids, and especially the advanced stuff. I'm like, no, here's Robert's number. So I know my role. Joining us, and we will see you next week, same time, same channel, and Facebook, Instagram, and also LinkedIn. Take care, guys.